Good morning and a very warm welcome to all the esteemed panelists and the moderator on day two of APAC Manufacturing Conclave. We had a very exciting day one yesterday where CIOs of different sectors talked about technology deployment. Now, we are starting the day two with the panel discussion on cybersecurity and blockchain. Before we move ahead, I would like to introduce you all to the esteemed panelists of this particular session. Annapurna, Ms. Annapurna from CTU Bajaj Electronics. We welcome you, ma'am. Then we have Raj Gopal Nayak, CTO of Metro Brand Limited.
Good morning.
We have Neha Taneja, Head Cybersecurity, Karen Oil and Gas.
Good
Welcome, ma'am.
morning.
We have Ambrish Singh, CISO, Godrej Invoice Manufacturing Company Limited. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, everyone.
We have Rajesh Dudu, VP and Practice Leader, Blockchain and Cybersecurity Tech Mahindra. Welcome, sir.
Morning, everyone.
Last but not the least, the moderator of this particular session, Mr. Amit Dubey, author, National Security Expert Head, Red Teaming Tech Mahindra. Welcome, sir. Now, hand over this particular panel discussion to the moderator, Mr. Amit Dubey, to go ahead with this particular panel discussion. I think Mr. Amit Dubey is trying to connect. I think there's some technical glitch on his end. Okay, let us connect with Mr. Amit Dubey in a while. So I'll just ask, to any one of you so that you guys can go ahead. For the time being, Sir joins. Because we can see there's some, internet issue on his end.
Sure. Hi. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's panel discussion on blockchain and cybersecurity. Let me start by asking the first question, and anyone within the panel can take it. What are the cybersecurity challenges that manufacturing CIOs are facing in deploying IoT within their organization and industry? Amrish?
Yeah, So thanks for asking that question, Raj. So I just get into the shoes of CIOs because being in cybersecurity for more than 20 years or so. So because we work very closely with the CIOs and their problems. Okay. So in manufacturing, various organizations are there at various stage of their IT deployment and their cloud migration, and they have got their own use cases. Okay, it's very important to understand. We cannot make a general statement that uh, what is the organization in the understand the business of the organization. Okay, in manufacturing, what business they are doing it. Okay, what are the like if they have got group of companies, they are into various businesses. Okay, normally in manufacturing you'll find buying very core business houses. They are manufacturing bunch of products. Okay, and deploying IoT becomes a lot of use cases they have. They want to go for a, like we talk about today, digital transformation. Okay, so one of the core principles they adopt is the digital transformation. Okay, a digital transformation means a lot of things to a lot of people. Okay, sometimes people feel that I'm going to convert my hard copies into soft copies, the digital transformation. Okay, that is digitization. Okay, then digital transformation has got multiple facets to it. Okay, one is you talk about cloud migration, which is core to the digital transformation journey you are going through. Second thing, probably you are thinking about as we are discussing about the IoT. Okay, what are the use cases we have? What are the product we can build into with the help of IoTs? Can we uh, uh, do we know what kind of customers we are looking at, and those customers are going to leverage this product, and they are looking for such products where the IoT can play a good role into it. Third thing is, do we have use cases to deploy something called RPA, robotic process automation, etc. Okay. And then you have bunch of legacy applications, those who are working on various legacy platforms, etc. And probably you are struggling with to maintain them. So you will have a CIO. A lot of people have challenge in migration. So how you want to plan that migration? It's a huge challenge, and that migration has to plan very very well. Even if there is a technology at cloud which is able to support, but selection of the right technology at cloud is very important, because it's not that you are having directly lift and shift. It will go through a lot of assessment, and you assess what kind of platform and database and platform as a service and infrastructure service you're going to get in the cloud versus what we have on-prem. And it's not that you deploy just IoT piece, it's a whole ecosystem. At what journey you are in that ecosystem, from the IoT use cases, deploying certain use cases, and then once you are through that, okay, there are certain use cases and there are certain products we are going to build with the help of IoT, like you talk about today, smart fridge, smart cameras, you have a smart doors, smart locks are coming, right? And then you look at the cyber security aspects of the IoT. I think that we will discuss in detail once we move forward a little bit. That's what my initial thoughts.
Absolutely, Amrish. Thank you for that plethora of ideas that came out over there. Annapurna, wanted to hear your views on the same. What are the cybersecurity challenges that manufacturing CIOs are facing deploying IoT?
Again, I agree with my earlier speaker, Amrish. It is legacy applications and the process which are hindering a lot in the implementation of IoT.
Thank you for that. Neha, any views on the same?
So, while I resonate with what my co-panelists said, I think the one part which is the way manufacturing was designed. It was never designed to keep the cybersecurity attack evolution in mind. So it's more like we can see there is a trend in the attacks getting more sophisticated, as well as it's more like, if you look at various attacks which have gained prominence on especially my sector, energy, colonial pipeline and all, there the advancement on the other side, attackers are getting also more bold. So that is something which is an uncharted territory yet, in terms of going by design. The way IT security still went ahead by design, manufacturing was never the security wasn't the interwoven thread into the manufacturing scheme of things. So that is something which is a very which is a challenge in terms of taking a approach towards how do you want to bake in cybersecurity into the overall scheme of things.
Understood. Rajesh, your views on the same?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rajgopal. I bring in a view from a IT services provider perspective, and also from the aspect that we work with several of these clients in the manufacturing sector. Based on our engagements, what we kind of gathered is many organizations, first of all, don't even know how many IoT assets have been installed in their environment. So the first one starts with the discovery process, because if you don't know what you don't know, then you cannot eliminate the threat vectors, and also for the cyber actors to obtain an opportunistic entry into the environment. As my previous panelists have said, and Neha had also alluded to, at Colonial Pipeline, all that they had to do is to, exploit the two-factor authentication, and boom, they are into the network, and they've taken the entire network into ransom. So the first thing is the discovery of those IoT assets. The second one, what we have noticed is many organizations kind of force fit their IT practices to their OT assets. Now, IT practices are not applicable to the OT assets. And we have also seen there is no segregation between the IT assets and the OT assets. So that's why you're seeing in the marketplace people like Tenable, who are launching Tenable.ot, which is completely different from tenable security center, which is more kind of designed for the IT assets. The third one that we've seen as a very good practice, or rather we recommend that as a good practice, is you ring fence all your OT assets. So when you say ring fence the OT assets, you don't expose the OT assets to the wild internet traffic, and then you do something called as a micro segmentation, where you ring fence those OT assets. You could deploy a micro cloud, and through the micro cloud you enable the connection of those OT assets or the OT sensors, either to the internet or to the other applications within the organization. So the micro segmentation can bring in what we call as the zero trust. And that zero trust is based on the principle like you don't trust the data, you don't trust the application, you don't trust the user. And every connection session, you need to validate them again and again, so that any opportunity for taking over the network can be identified and can be deflected successfully. These are the three things that I have seen by virtue of engagement, both with international customers as also with customers in India. And in fact, as we speak, we are implementing this for our parent company, which is Mahindra and Mahindra Auto. With that, I will hand it over back to you, Raj.
Thank you, Rajesh. Interesting use of the Johari window of, we don't know what we don't know. Yeah, thank you for that. Maybe I'll also have a go at this question. You know, uh, Primarily the way I look at it, that in the manufacturing industry, while deploying IoTs, there are a number of issues that one has to grapple with. Primarily among them will be lack of or inconsistent security standards. If at all there is security built into the ecosystem, that is one that comes to mind. Second one is with respect to being able to handle older IoT asset, or the legacy, as one might say. Many of them have not been built in with security in mind to begin with, or security by design, leading to a possibility of exploitation. The third is, what I would also see is that a lot of these IoT devices have been built with one particular design consideration in mind, that is, a larger battery life, which means the compute that is available, right, the network connectivity that is available is also of a lower grade, to ensure a longer life for the device. Now what that means is that one cannot have built-in firewalls, antiviruses, or end-to-end encryption in a lot of them, right? At least the older ones. So this leaves systems open to a cyber attack. A corollary to that also means that these systems can be overloaded very easily from a denial of service point of view, especially given many of them don't have authentication as a built-in feature, right? Denial of service is also another example wherein you render a particular manufacturing asset at risk, right? And finally, we are very used to having firmware upgrades for all other devices, but for IoT devices, by design, over the air, firmware upgrades are typically not built in, right? And given the fact that the more and more we leverage IoT devices, not just for manufacturing premises that are easily accessible, but let's say for an oil pipeline that goes through remote areas, right? Ensuring regular updates becomes a challenge. Yeah. And last and not least, which anyway this issue is getting rapidly addressed, is in terms of lack of education and awareness between manufacturers and consumers. But like I said, that's soon going to be a thing of the past. Yeah. uh, with that, I move to my next question to the panel. That is, how can manufacturing CIOs ensure that OT security is there in their smart factory? Okay.
I would like to take a moment here as
Sure, Neha.
I would like to welcome Mr. Amit Dubey, who is the author, National Security Expert Head, Red Teaming Tech Mahindra. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Over to
Thank
you,
you
Amit.
so much. I
Yeah,
had some
so I
technical
will
issues,
just
so
just hand over this to Mr. Amit Dubey, so that sir can go ahead with this particular panel discussion.
thank you so much, and I welcome all my eminent panelists here. I see wonderful people; those are really experienced, I have personal experience with him because we both work for the same objective, and also the Neha, Annapurna ji, Ambarish, Rajgopal. So I welcome you all once again, and sorry for my delay. I would like to give some emphasis on. I was just listening you all, and I think those are very valid points in today's context when we are transforming, especially Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is creating new kind of challenges for manufacturing and logistics and all these other industries as well. And that is somewhere I think we need to create a new layer on top of whatever we have in the process, because most of these attacks that we have observed and investigating, whether they are exploiting technical vulnerabilities or process vulnerabilities or people vulnerabilities, ultimately this all is possible because of not having a cohesive integration between multiple components of an industrial manufacturing plant. So I think that is the bigger aspects of it, whether we could integrate multiple things together, not challenging or not compromising their security aspects. So I would like to take few questions from each one of you. I was asked to moderate actually the session, and I have some beautiful questions with me. Probably we can start with RD here. RD, I know he is a blockchain expert, and he has already mentioned the challenges briefly and the processes those are used to ensure security. Uh, RD, because blockchain is becoming a very good tool to solve many of these problems. So I need to know something from you, like how blockchain can help us to improve the cybersecurity of supply chain, especially.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Thanks for the kind words, and also thanks for an interesting question. If you look at the cybersecurity world, most of it is architected on centralized infrastructures, right? The single point of failure is centralized, and when you have something like a DOS or a DDoS kind of an attack, they come from multiple vectors and they bring down the centralized infrastructure. And once it is successful, there is an outage and there is a damage. Whereas blockchain is all based on decentralized architectures. So, for example, you can build in a redundant point where there is no single point of failure. There are redundancies that are available. So even if there is a DDoS attack on a single vector, if it goes down, the other vectors can come up from a redundancy perspective and ensure the continuity of service. And I'm not saying this purely from an academic perspective. If you see the number of attacks that have happened on the content delivery network over the last 1 or 2 years, and it kind of established to the world that a single point of failure is a major problem area in the cybersecurity world. So the cybersecurity architectures need to be completely transformed, and they need to be re-engineered to accommodate or to cater to this particular aspect. The second one, what we have seen from a solar winds perspective, the massive supply chain kind of an attack. A lot of people say that while the attack has been triggered by compromisation of identity and access management systems, these guys had an unauthorized access to it, and then they triggered code updates. And once they triggered the code updates on an unauthorized fashion, everybody went and installed that particular update. Now, is there an opportunity to create code provenance on a blockchain network? So, the company, which is the custodian of the main code base, maintains that golden code base in a blockchain network. And when the trigger for an update comes, a version update or plugins, additional plugins comes, you can go to that particular golden code base on a blockchain network, which is immutable, and compare whether there have been any updates to the golden code base vis-a-vis the updates or the trigger for the updates the customers have obtained. Then obviously cybersecurity is going to be re-architected because of blockchain, because we are already talking about passwordless authentication. We are also talking about a concept called zero knowledge proofs, where no major information gets exchanged between a person who is authenticating and a person who is being authenticated. Because of these zero knowledge proofs, there is no exchange of secret information, as a result of which there is no harvesting of that particular secret information, either through phishing attacks or the others. There are many more such use cases, but I just wanted to share three of those so that it kind of trigger additional thought process in the panel. Thank you, Amit. Back to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think exploiting the decentralized capabilities of this framework could help us to manage multiple types of IoT devices. I would move to Neha, and Neha, being cybersecurity head in Cairns and oils and gas plant, I think she can give us some insight on challenges that we have, especially for oil and gas sector. We have seen some recent cyber attacks, especially for this sector. We have also, I would consider the energy sector per se. We have seen the Mumbai attacks, and it was investigated by Maharashtra Cyber. I was part of that investigation process, and we found close to 14 such backdoors. Those were either so it was not instantaneous attacks; it was a planned or a sequential attack through some APTs. So I would like to have more light on this aspects. What kind of new threat that we observe, especially for energy sector, Nehaji?
So, one of the primary parts when we talk of energy is, as you used the word initially, the legacy part of it. So even if you look at major organizations, they still struggle with certain things such as your end of support systems, and such as various factors like the weak passwords and use of default credentials, which likely as a habit is more prominent on the OT side of things because of the way this has been traditionally operated as a air gap system. I'm talking way back. So the default credentials, the end of support, and MFA, those basic things are even at not that level of adoption which they should be ideally. Having said that, if I talk compared IT, the way the SOC sim operations have kind of evolved with respect to the kill chain, with respect to the attack frameworks, the OT SOC sim is not at that level of maturity in terms of the correlation and the analysis part of it, because the OT protocols are themselves different. So as we said, I think my co-panelist, I think Rajesh also mentioned about some re-engineering aspect to be built into that, and I completely resonate with that thought, especially on the OT side of things. The exact replication of IT security concept to OT is where I see is it's not going to work at all. I think that is the baseline, the thought process, the strategy on that front needs to change in terms of having a holistic approach which thinks of the unique elements, such as what is the OT SOC expected to do in terms of what kind of use cases are you trying to get out of the OT SOC, and how will your incident response be different. Maybe baking ransomware drills into your incident response drill. So those are the kind of things where OT needs to move towards.
Correct, correct. So, in fact, I'll share some experience. I was running a company where we were managing IoT devices, especially the trackers. Those are the devices, those have inbuilt GPS, and to solve various industrial problems. The critical vulnerabilities that we observed, that most of these devices, they are on open protocols, and most of these manufacturers are from China. So hacking such devices are so easy because they always offer SMS based configuration facilities to any of this device. And most of these devices were also used in places like police patrolling, and places where the critical assets are moving out to defense. And this was a big challenge. So I'm jumping to Raj Gopal because he's chief technical officer. Uh, how much risk do we have if we go for such because you need to balance out on these two aspects, why we were using Chinese devices because of the cost factor, missing out some Indian manufacturers. So there is no such standardization on securing, especially the protocol level security of these devices. So how do you think, especially in current context, uh, not having such a standardization are creating challenges for IoT?
Thanks, Amit. See, not having standardization always becomes a challenge, not just from a security aspect, even from an interoperability aspect. You know, you might order some devices right now, install them, leverage them 1 year down the line. Okay, if you're not able to get devices of the same protocol, or if there's a version mismatch, you end up with issues. These are operational issues, let alone security issues. Now, as far as sourcing from other countries versus make in India and all, I'll not really get into that. See, the fact of the matter is that consistent standards allow for a consistent response, which logically means that from an operational and a security point of view, you know what beast you're dealing with, right? So between having the latest security but knowing, on the other hand, having a system and that is variable, and having a system that's consistent but with known flaws, you know the latter is better, because you can build a security ring fence if required around that. It could be as simple as disabling protocols or ports or what you may within the
Hmm.
IoT devices for known vulnerabilities, and only keep open what you need, similar to what one of the panelists mentioned in terms of
Yeah, Rajgopal,
a
do
pseudo
you
zero
think?
trust architecture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just adding up on that question. I think you are taking it the right direction. Do we need a national IoT security policy as well? Because many of these incoherence are created because of not having such centralized guidelines.
absolutely, Amit, you hit the nail on the head. Right, there is a need for standardization in order to ensure that the industry grows, and more importantly, the willingness to adopt, okay, within various organizations increases.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajgopal. Now, moving to Anpurnaji. Anpurnaji, from Bajaj Electricals, I'm sure you would have also faced the similar challenges of having incoherent standards across different such IoT devices. My question is coming from different angle. We always we rely, and I think RD has pointed out briefly on that aspect. We rely on the password protections, and we rely on authentication mechanisms, especially for IoT. Most of these common vulnerabilities are exposed because of not having such earlier legacy of IDAM solutions for IoTs. From your industry's perspective, how do you see, what are the two, three critical challenges that those are there, especially for the devices or the IoT components or OT processes that those are faced or those are used by your industry?
When it comes to password protection, though all the rules are implemented by the devices and firmware or software, whatever it is, people share the passwords
Okay,
with others. That is the biggest threat.
and
So
and I think
continuous
in the
education.
yeah, so I think in this recent Florida water purification attack where I think some chemical was introduced. It was also because of the password sharing or something. If you remember correctly, I think
Yeah,
somebody some incident
mostly it
cited.
should
Yeah.
be. It should be. How much ever we incorporate tools, systems, whatever it is, utilities, unless people get education, will they share their ATM password? Will they share their ATM pin? No. So, continuous education and handling with punishments and all. That is the, even for smaller things, that will resolve this issue to some extent. That is number one. And having a security policy, as one of my co-panelists they explained, not for separating IT assets and OT assets, and for OT assets having a separate security policy and implementation plan, having audits, internal audits, external audits, standardization. All these things will resolve the problem to a major extent.
So these are the problems, and we have RD who has been actually providing us some solutions since beginning. So I'm coming back to RD. And do you think so? We were expecting something from a national cybersecurity strategy perspective. Do we Do we need a specialized IoT security policy, IoT security strategy? And so, if we draft such a strategy, can you give us some key aspects of some important points which we should cover in this policy strategy?
Sure, definitely, Amit. In terms of, I don't know at this point of time, does CERT has a different, provision to recognize all the attacks or the malwares that are happening on the OT devices. So first, we need to start from that particular aspect. And CERT being the national database, and it is a very good repository, and is that differentiation which is happening at the central level. So once we start from that particular aspect where you differentiate it and recognize that in a separate category, like just now Annapurna ji and previously Rajgopal and the others have said, there are particular different mechanisms of audits and different standards that are actually there from a OT asset perspective. So given that, can we start segregating them completely and then create a completely different repository and a knowledge base at the national level? Once you start doing that, and then culminate the best practices. Today, if you look at the best practices, what is the national security policy talking about? Because of the ongoing pandemic and because of work from anywhere, because of the digital work environment, there's a lot of focus in terms of how do you safeguard those environments. But there's not much of focus in terms of how do you safeguard the manufacturing environments on the virtue of the deployment of these OT assets or IoT assets or the IoT practices. So I think there's a lot of knowledge sharing also that needs to be done. Probably there's an opportunity to create a self-help group. We do that at the grass level in terms of self-help for microfinance and the other things. But why not a self-help group for the manufacturing industry at the national level or the regional level, where we've seen the brain power on this particular panel, right? Rajgopal, Annapurna, Ambarish, Neha, they bring in a lot of experience by virtue of what they do on a daily basis. Can we create something to channelize their experience and insights, which kind of dovetail back into the national policy formulation? I mean, these are few things that come to my mind.
Wonderful.
Actually, I was
Thank you,
about
Amit.
to add that point,
Yeah,
a consortium kind of thing. Really, it will help. Then, once this consortium gives recommendations, national IT policy, like MIT department or whoever it is, they may take it up and they may add this into national security policy. So, an initiation from manufacturing industry or retail or supply chain, whoever it is, this may take us a long way. Really.
So I
absolutely.
think I'll also like to add on to the aspect of, what happens when you have such a national policy by drawing an analogy. We've all seen how the data privacy bill has shaped up. While it has still not become a act, but because of we know it's round the corner, organizations have already, especially the ones dealing with PHI and PII, the prep part of it, because the penalties are severe, has already started. So we may not be completely there, but the journey started. So I think if that kind of attention comes from national level mandates, then this area would also become into that, prepare for the worst kind of earlier. Do not wait for things to happen. So I think that would help.
Exactly.
As I
In
worked
fact, I was
earlier
coming
in
to that
government
point.
sector also,
Yeah,
I always kept hearing that if the private sector comes forward with recommendations and all, government will be ready to take those things up. So a consortium kind of thing from all of us, it may really help.
definitely. I think MITI has already started some discussions around IoT security policy. I was part of some initial meetings, but I don't know their mandate yet. So I think we can always suggest these beautiful ideas to creating a consortium of engaging people from different sectors. And then because few of these challenges are quite unique and different for different sectors. So though we combine them all together, okay, IoT challenges, OT challenges, but I have seen if we compare the energy sector versus other manufacturing sectors, it is different. It is little different because of somewhere we prioritize processes, somewhere we prioritize devices too much, or there are proliferations of new kind of devices as well. So my question to Ambrish, if suppose we take for a moment, we take these industrial challenges aside, for day to day life also we are using IoT a lot, and that is also creating vulnerabilities because we use it for industrial or plant monitoring also, and these are the devices, those are like sensors, very commonly used in real life. It could be a smart television also, it could be a smart door sensor as well, and we don't have any standard quality assurance process. For example, do we need just like an ISO standard, do we need such labeling of these devices in India, that if it is certified by this body, it is having that tappa, okay, this is secure and this can be used. Is it high time to have such kind of labeling of these devices by some government accredited bodies? Ambrish.
Thanks, Amish, for asking the relevant question. And I totally about yes. See, like when I joined around 10 months back, I joined from Flipkart. I was heading Flipkart InfoSec for 6, 7 years. So when you came joined the manufacturing industry, I realized there are some products we are developing for the customers, and the customers IoT products, smart. We talked about smart fridge, smart camera, etc., smart lock. Okay,
Correct.
and this has got very sensitive element around it because it has to be very going to cater for a lot of sensitive data of the customer. And when
Hmm.
I was trying to find out what are the standards we have from the firmware perspective, and how do you do the ensure that security of this product is ensured. So while do a lot of analysis, I came up 4 or 5 ideas. One is, uh, can we look at from the cybersecurity angle? One is the firmware itself. How to ensure that firmware is secure? Okay.
Hmm.
So do we have a standard guidelines on firmware? There are various guidelines. They are talking about a bunch of things. Okay. There are some firmware talking guidance talking about zoning concept. Somebody talking about port concept. A bunch of things. Okay. Then this firmware was get into a device. How devices are connecting, the secure connectivity part. And then we have a mobile app and web application that is standard cyber security. You ensure that. So and thereafter you have the infrastructure. So basically, I'm talking about from security from chip to cloud. Okay,
Hmm.
where your customers are going to access and they're going to do a bunch of activities. Their recording is there, and their recording has to be kept. They're going to subscribe to. Okay, but holistically, if you like today somebody want to develop a security policy, we have ISO framework. We want to a
Hmm.
BCP, we have ISO framework. However, in this sector, we talk about OT or IoT, we don't have a standard framework. Probably, like suppose you want to develop certain policy which is related to cloud security or maybe IoT security, we need to
Hmm.
put our brains, experience, look at ISO, what ISO said, look at the best practices of NIST, etc., and thereafter bring up something own, and every organization is doing it. It's all again. Neha was talking about a lot of things are traditional in nature. Okay, you're grappling with
Yeah.
the old technologies. You're grappling with, like suppose you know that what is moving toward zero trust. Here you have something probably it's not able to support password policy also, right? And it cannot upgrade that device because that is so old. OEM has denied that there is no support to this device, but you have to run that manufacturing plant. So how to fortify that? Correct. So uh, there are a bunch of challenges right now. What industry is doing is I keep talking to various CISOs at manufacturing and other industries. They are applying their IT security principles to make sure that what best can be done. They all are grappling with such a standard guidelines and practices. Okay, and I echo what Neha said. As you talk about data privacy, every organization is preparing for it. Okay, a lot of analysis is happening, a lot of mapping is happening, because you should know where your private API data is. Then only you can secure them. You can do a bunch of other things. Similarly, here, if you have something, industry knows something going to come up, right? That seriousness comes from the top down, and then you get that hand holding, you get that support, and thereafter you take it forward. Okay. Right now, what happens? You're talking a bunch of things that people say, okay, this has been happening for many years. Nothing will go wrong. Okay. So that concept, the changing that mindset itself is a challenge. Okay. And I think people are changing. People are aware of cybersecurity threats. What are various things are happening in the industry. They are opening up now. They are accepting that, oh, we need to do something about it. But that what we need to do, that is a question mark. And every CISO in manufacturing is uh, doing their best based on their experience, skill set, knowledge, and what they see in various frameworks and guidelines, and they are trying to do their best to secure their infrastructure.
Yeah, one thing
Absolutely.
is it can happen to anyone, not for us. That is the
Yeah,
mentality. Yeah.
correct.
So,
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing.
And
yeah.
one more
We
thing,
all are in
probably I
demand.
keep talking about is that uh, people, process, and technology, they have to complement each other. Okay,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you implement the best of technology, you don't have people skill set to manage that. If you don't have process around it, you will fail. And business, this all things has to be closer to the business, and awareness is the key.
But thanks
So
to
I'm
the
coming.
digitization in personal lives, so people are aware of security at least to a minimum level.
Yeah, it's coming because of mostly because of the mobile related issues and challenges, and they are still not aware about the challenges associated to Fitbit band, Alexa devices, smart geysers, smart televisions. I think that level of awareness we are yet to reach there, but it is started. I think we do agree on this aspect. And I'm moving to Rajpalji. Rajpalji, recently I was investigating a case and I found when we zeroed down the culprit that there were 16,000 mobile phones running on telecom operators with the same IMEI number. And that was strange because that is not only giving a financial loss to a country because most of these devices are imported and they are taxed because of their unique identifications, but also creating security challenges for other sectors. So I think RD has mentioned that solution that we should have a centralized repository system where we could have all these IoT devices registered, and we could, and that should be controlled by some government accredited body. So labeling is one thing. Do you think now we need, or will it create further privacy challenges? I need some open reaction on this possibilities, or if it will solve lots of issues. Rajpal.
No, in fact, it will definitely solve lot of issues because please realize that it's not that security and privacy are diametrically opposite, right? In fact, technologies like blockchain, okay, actually help achieve both, right? In terms of ensuring security, ensuring validation, okay, without the need for revealing everything, and more importantly, also ensuring resiliency, be it to cyber attacks, be it to outages, because of the distributed nature of the ledger to begin with, right?
Correct.
However, a few things with respect to privacy still might become a challenge in blockchain, especially if you look at let's say GDPR, and there is a clause I believe that they want to implement with the right to be forgotten,
Hmm.
right? Now in a blockchain, you can have a transaction that shows a reversal, but you can't eliminate the transaction from the ledger,
Correct. Correct.
right? Such challenges will continue to exist. However, standardization and in fact legislation to force security and data privacy is definitely the need of the hour, and I do believe a national level task force should be there to address this. Over to you,
So I
Amar.
think yeah, I'm consolidating all these suggestions. We are getting beautiful suggestions here. Number one, getting a centralized task force with proper representations of different bodies or different verticals. Second, having a centralized database of these IoT uh, devices, peripherals, sensors, and third, I think the labeling, the quality assurance, or some accredited body should be created, which could have a regular assessment of what all we are importing from outside. So at least I have some idea of the outcome that we can propose further based on discussion. We are moving ahead with the RD now, and RD, can you suggest some more solutions that we can have, especially for the OT sector, and where challenges would come because of the new technologies. For example, we are entering into quantum physics. We are experiencing we are moving to metaverse, or any such new ball game that we will have very soon in our life. Will that also impact our IoT OT challenge landscape, or do you think it is isolated? Yeah, RD.
Yeah, sure, Amit. In terms of quantum definitely is going to be a double-edged sword. There has also been a paper that has been put out, and I had also written few things about it. See, basically, what happens with the current encryption algorithms that we have, they are based on the trapdoor mathematical functionality. So, in terms of you can easily compute the values, but you cannot reverse engineer them. Because of
Right.
that, the classical computers are not able to break that encryption algorithm, whereas quantum is able to break that. But having said that, there are a lot of encryption algorithms. I think the most vulnerable is RSA. But if you see the ECC kind of an algorithm, if you see AES kind of an algorithm, they're already quantum safe. What is going to quantum what is going to come forth as a threat from a quantum perspective is as an ability to break the algorithm. But already people have demonstrated the key distribution using quantum private distribution of key using quantum
Right.
safe technologies. So that's number one, that we don't know. In terms of the verdict is still not clear whether it is going to further secure our world or further make our world a lot more vulnerable. With regards to the OT aspects, we have already discussed a number of things on this particular panel, right from the operating systems to firmware to practices to segmentation and various other things. And as Annapurna ji had said before, which I kind of align with that, and that is what I call as the failure of human firewalls. In terms of the human firewalls are very very important. You can have a state of the art firewall, but if you're going to use passwords which are very very simple, even a kid can crack into those passwords, and you don't use a password hygiene that is very very strong, and you don't use the best practices over there. I can tell you, in one of the phishing attacks, we were wondering what should we do, and we said, why don't we use double vaccination certificate download link? And 85% of people jumped at it and clicked it because they wanted to get a double vaccination certificate to be downloaded immediately. So those are the things that we need to focus more. One is in terms of hardening of the infrastructure, strengthening of the security posture from an assets and from a technology stack perspective. But the other one is in terms of the strengthening of the human elements, whether it is OT, IoT, or whatever it is. There's a lot more to be done. And as I said before, even some of the sophisticated supply chain attacks have happened through the harvesting of the user credentials. If those harvesting of user credentials would not have happened, there wouldn't have been a supply chain attack at all. So these are the things that come to my mind based on my limited knowledge, Amit. Beyond that, I'm not able to think of anything.
I think that is really wonderful, RD, because you have really touched upon the weakest link of this chain. So human related issues, vulnerabilities are always a challenge, and I think almost 80 to 90% such attacks are successful because of those vulnerabilities. So I'm coming to Annapurna ji, because so when we have a proliferation of IoT devices, there are parallel challenges of data privacies, because all this data is stored somewhere, and India is yet to get the data privacy bill, and this data privacy bill does not have much focus on IoT part, and that is also one of the other challenge. Specifically, they have classified data, they have different kind of data. So briefly, they'll touch on the health sensors. They'll briefly touch on other such kind of specific data. Those are collected through IT devices. But broadly, as we always have experienced that when these are merged together, we create a new kind of challenges. So, Annapurna ji, how do you see evolution of data privacy challenges in due course of time? Even after we have data privacy bill in place in India, do you still see some untouched areas which should be covered in future?
It is implementation more than policies, I feel. Um,
Hmm.
when it comes to data privacy, the first control is access control lists. So
Right.
there should be a lot of thrust on providing, having appropriate approvals, and not only having appropriate approvals, a periodic, a very short periodic review of these access control lists, and not monthly or once in 2 months or 3 months like that. Maybe if it is required, even every week also, it should be done. Or if it is required, if the volume is so high, then it can be, one person can be dedicated for that. Lot of thrust on access control lists while providing access and reviewing, and whenever it is not required, immediately removing those things. These things will control a lot. Then DLP. DLP is another mechanism where we can control these things. Of course, everything comes with cost, but all these things are worth doing.
I think yes. So I think we'll get to know in due course of time more such challenges for sure. So the areas that we have touched upon. In fact, during this Arogya Setu and Kovin implementation, especially because I was involved in some of these security assessments, I realized there are multiple channels through which the data can go out. It's not only challenging the authentication part of it or the accessibility part of it. For example, you would have heard from the news that COVID data, a few of these people, those were doing for vaccinations, their data points were leaked. And when we investigated, we found that it was not leaked from the server. The leak happened because of the ignorance of these different NGOs or doctors, those were given this access.
Right.
So, and because the data was processed at multiple times, not from the application perspective, because they were creating a local copy of also, so that they can manage it, and that local copy was leaked. So, anyways, this is a process issue actually. This is not a technical issue per se. Similarly, if you see the Arogya Setu, I'm just taking these examples because these are the applications those are of that scale where eventually it becomes or it creates the challenges that we have in IoT as well, because we see so many billions of devices will be created or will be deployed. So I'm coming to Neha, and these are the success stories, I would say. Arogya Setu and Kovin I consider very very fruitful solutions for Indian uh, deployed by Indian government and for Indian people. I think, do we have any learning from these solutions for the IoT sector, or how can India help the world in this? Because we all these applications that we have from the government sector, we are always the number one in terms of data storage, number one in data processing, analytics. So we have all those ingredients in these solutions. Those would eventually become challenge for IoT.
Uh,
Neha, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just, giving a point of view in terms of the way we were talking about centralization of policies and, the databases. And so, what include the entire ecosystem, OT is as successful as the OEM providers are. So, for example, you would be a lot more depending for your patching and other activities in the OT sector for your OEMs, because they have specific products, which you
Right.
will have to, even if deploying a solution on the OT, you need to have a concurrence from the OEM vendors, be it a Yokogawa, Siemens, any vendor for that matter, the OEM.
Right.
So include the OEM into the ecosystem for even your data privacy part of it, even the centralization policy mandates part of it. Even so, when you evolve practices at your end, for example, for remote access, onboard the OEM also onto that practices to understand that they are also following a cohesive and parallel approach. So I think include the ecosystem is my one line summary when I say that especially the third parties, and maybe if they have fourth parties, you need to be aware about them. So I think that should address a bit of the issue of having a heterogeneous approach.
We should
Yeah, I
have
liked what
heterogeneous.
Niyaz said. Yeah.
Yeah, please, sir.
So we talked about a very interesting part of third party. A lot of hack has happened due to the vulnerability and
Correct.
weak security practices at third party, and it is very important. Many for every organization, and some organization more prominent and more relevant is you do you do due diligence while onboarding a third party. Are you going to buy something from the third party? Because you want to ensure that, see, you have a bunch of controls at your end and you give free hand to a third party. I've seen people give VPN on the third party's asset or maybe personal asset. People are accessing via VPN your bunch of applications, and you have bunch of DLP, a bunch of posture assessment, bunch of things on your for your employees, your asset, but you do not have any control over third party. So one
Right.
is the doing just while onboarding. Second thing, ensuring that some ingredients of security are there in the contract, like right to audit, etc. And so that you are ensuring that one important element is once you are sharing data with any third party, ensure that in a contract, whenever you depart from that third party, he has to wipe your data, not delete your data, wipe your data, and he has to give confirmation that he no more holds your data once you depart from that third party. And these all things has to be built into the contract itself, so that it becomes legally binding and it gives seriousness to the what the business is going to do. Because what I've seen personally is this is what the international organizations, when they want to do business with you, to get manufactured something, they are doing to you. They are doing a lot of security assessment, and they want to understand how do you going to handle my data, my processes when I start business with you, and it's vice versa. So it's very important. And we have learning big hacks that happen due to the third party intelligences. Yeah.
I think this is a very relevant point, especially when we are scaling up these solutions. Third party becomes an integral part of it. And I would share one of my such experience. I was doing a security assessment of a bank, and it was a foreign bank, and they said that they have all the security provisions, so there's no such challenge around, and you won't find anything. So I took this challenge, and I was just googling, and I found a news linked to that bank that they have recently hired a law firm to provide some legal services, and eventually our focus becomes the law firm. And then we found that law firm's email server is not secure, and anybody can spoof that email. We did that. We sent an email to the CEO of the bank to, to asking some documents from him, and he shared back. So you are absolutely right. It is not linked. The security is not limited to your peripherals, or periphery. It is actually beyond that. It is extended to your third party, second party, or even beyond that. Anybody can create a VPN kind of tunnel to reach to your core network, and you would never get to know about it. So I'm coming to again Raj Gopalji, because these are the new kind of threats that will evolve in future. So from you, because we are left few time, what is your uh, suggestions to overcome such kind of challenges, especially the second and third party related issues?
So, first thing is, a lot of times when any organization, builds a system, and you want to onboard a third party to leverage that data, typically, what is done is that, well, postman outputs of the API, or the documentation with respect to the API, is given, or a reference architecture for that matter. I have never come across a reference deployment mandate or guidance from a security and privacy point of view ever being handed out, right? That is one fundamental change that needs to be done. You might put everything in the contract. You might take cyber crime, cyber liability insurance for yourself, for your third party, but a lot of times these just remain on document. The person on ground, the developer on ground, the analyst on ground who's using it, may not be even aware of it, may not even have access to these contracts to begin with. you know that is where, having documentation and communication, which is typically the reference implementations, etc., if they cover the security aspects and the key expectations and tenets, that itself will move mountains. with respect to ensuring that data leak doesn't happen. The other thing is from a point of view of why really allow local copies of data to be stored. Today everything is on the cloud, right? You can create a separate tenant where a particular copy is available for manipulation and output, wherein you cannot download. Okay, at least you cannot download raw data, aggregates, charts, graphs, etc., right? And which is the majority of the output that comes out can still be leveraged. And there is a level of privacy that comes in when you do aggregates and things of that nature, right? That is the second suggestion that I had. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I really learned a lot from each one of you, and you have wonderful suggestions. I'll request Shivani to consolidate all these suggestions, and we can definitely reach out to BT, MHA, and all such relevant bodies very soon with these suggestions. I may take one or two lines of maybe conclusive points from each one of you before I wrap up the session. Starting from RD, how do you see as an outcome of this panel? And we want to make two recommendations to Government of India. What could be those two, three? You can recommend as many as you can, but just at least two for our
Sorry, Amit,
sake.
there was an unexpected noise from the phone, so I
No
didn't
problem.
quite catch your question. Do you mind repeating it,
So,
please?
yeah, sure, sir. So before I wrap up the session, I request each one of you to give us two, three suggestions that we could make to Government of India or METI or other stakeholders uh, as a white paper, okay, as an outcome of this panel. So I just request at least 2 points, minimum 2 points, which we could suggest, and we will take it up further.
Yeah, Amit, in terms of based on what we saw in the country during the demonetization era, government embarked on a journey called digital payments bhi sahi hai. So why can't we do security bhi sahi hai? And that security has to be for OT, has to be for digital work environment, for SMBs. Until and unless we bring in that kind of a mass, focus, it will never get to the level it should be. So if Honorable Prime Minister tells everybody to teach others how to use digital payment, the Honorable Prime Minister should also tell SMBs or the enterprises to teach other enterprises how to secure, right? Otherwise, it is going to be a big challenge. I think that if we get that going at an apex level, the rest of the things will fall in place.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Adi. Anpunaji, your two bits out of this panel. Yeah.
So, entire supply chain is on the journey of digitization. Maybe it is too early for me to say this, but as Neha has pointed out earlier, security is to be designed from the beginning itself. And at this time, it is time of the need of the hour. Okay, so like if government can put a rule, maybe within 1 year or 2 years, whatever it is. So the standardization should be in place, and people, organizations should be complying with that. And there are so many conditions from SEBI or from banks or from other governmental agencies. So wherever it is, if it is made mandatory, so everyone will try to abide by that. So that kind of initiation and some starting point from the government, it will be really of help.
Thank you, Anpunaji. Amrishji. Amrishji.
Sure. Yeah. So as we discussed, probably we need to have some standard guidelines for the OT, IoT, and CIoT, and plus accreditation and certification body, so that we can go to that body and understand whether this firmware is secure enough to use this in a particular product or not, and that is where the customer will also get confidence. People can market their product that this has been certified by the certain agency, which has got its own credentials. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Nehaji, over to you.
So, maybe taking a cue from the sector which has been ahead on certain things such as BFSI, some kind of, a independent assessment report out to a centralized body. So, and since, it's an initial stage, okay, these are the 5 parameters on cyber resiliency which you need to report out in your first year of maturity. Then take 6 months. This is what we expect into 6 months. But has to be a regulatory report out body which mandates us to take these steps in those 6 months. So I think that should help.
Wonderful, wonderful. Rajgopalji sir, over to you.
So while the government can have a central body that puts out reference architecture, standards, etc., having empowering the user with something that we see, for example, if I buy a geyser, that is the energy rating, right? A similar
Hmm.
concept of a security rating that makes it easy for the consumer
Labeling part.
to
Yeah,
understand, and indirectly you end up demanding a particular rating before I use a particular device, right? Be it the B2B
wonderful.
consumer or consumers like us, the B2C consumers. That will go a long way in pushing both ends of the pipeline to ensure better and safer usage of systems. Thank you.
Correct. I think Singapore has already started this labeling of security labeling of the devices, and we can learn from them. They have already implemented this policy. So, with these wonderful suggestions, I'll wrap this session here. And thank you so much for being part of this discussion. We have actually got very beautiful inputs for this. I'll create a paper on using all these inputs. Probably we'll submit it to MITI and Government of India. Shivani, over to you. It's done from my side. Thank you.
So, I would like to thank all the panelists and the moderator for such an insightful session. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our industry partners without whose support and conclave of such a scale would not have been possible. So, I would like to mention governments Tamil Nadu, Fortinet, Siemens, Avaya, Weston, Morphisec, and Choice Solutions for their support. We have a small token of appreciation for all the CIOs for their contribution in their respective field. So it is APEC Manufacturing Leadership Award. We would like to felicitate all the esteemed panelists and the moderator with this small token of appreciation. We have Mr. Amit Dubey, author, National Security Expert Head, Red Teaming Tech Mahindra, for his pioneering role in technology leadership in the technology service sector.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Shivani ji. Thank you so much.
Then we have Ms. Annapurna Kuchibhatia, CTO Bajaj Electronics, for her contribution in the consumer appliance sector.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Raj Gopal Nayak, CTO of Metro Brand Limited, for his pioneering role in technology leadership in the fashion accessories sector.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Then we have Ms. Neha Taneja, Head Cybersecurity, Karen Oil and Gas, for her pioneering role in the technology leadership in the oil and gas sector.
Thank you so much.
Ambrish Singh, CISO, Godrej and Boyce Manufacturing Company Limited, for his pioneering role in technology leadership in the engineering solutions sector.
Thank you.
Then we have Rajesh Dudu, VP and Practice Leader, Blockchain and Cybersecurity Tech Mahindra, for his pioneering role in the technology services sector.
Thank you, Neha. I'll clap for myself too.
So thank you so much, everyone, for making this session a very insightful one and for joining us and making it a great success.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
panelists
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
and
Thank
all
you.
the guests.